The Spook Who Sat by the Door is probably one of my favorite films that comes out of this tradition of drama and action film. So The Spook Who Sat by the Door is a film that was released in 1973 that was inspired by and based on the novel by the same name. The 1969 The Spook Who Sat by the Door novel by Sam Grinley is the fictional story of Dan Freeman, the first Black CIA officer, and of the CIA's history of training persons and political groups who later used their specialized training in gathering intelligence, political subversion, and guerrilla warfare against the CIA. So, long story short, Dan Freeman, a Black man, becomes the first Black CIA agent and uses what he learned in the CIA against the CIA. Now, this film, The Spook Who Sat by the Door, speaks to revolutionary dreams and Black realities. I enjoy the film, and I found it really interesting how darkly lit some of the film scenes are. I feel that at moments of greatest revelation, the scene would be darkly lit instead of bright, which is the opposite of what we are used to in a film. Usually when something is being revealed in a film, the lighting becomes brighter, right? And The Spook Who Sat by the Door does the opposite because these revelations are, one, usually very dark and dim and grim. You know, when Black people become aware of the true realities, it's not something that's bright. It's not something that is going to give you hope. It's also not going to put you in a state of dismay, but it's dark. These are very dark truths that are revealed in the film. So I really loved how they played with the lighting in the film as well. Now, I'll admit that at the start and towards the middle of the film, I was confused as to what was happening and what the overall point of the movie was. But when I rewatched the film, I understood that it was highlighting what has often been done to Black revolutions. Infiltration, destruction, and fear-mongering were the three tactics that the FBI, CIA, and every other protector of peace used against the Black Panther Party and other Black political groups to bring about their demise. The main character, Freeman, and also, of all the names, Freeman, that's a beautiful and wonderful subtlety in the film, uses his talents and new skills learned after infiltrating the CIA to organize Black youth into guerrilla warriors in efforts to overthrow the white establishments in their neighborhoods. Truthfully, I felt that the idea was a little crazy and unrealistic on my first watch of the film, but once rewatching it, and as the story progresses, I thought about my own neighborhood and the extraordinary potential for an organized uprising. I kept thinking, imagine if all the gangs organized in this way. What the movie did for me was force me to critically assess the work that is what I'm doing in my own life. Am I like the remaining men who wanted Freeman to perform below his level so they could all just get by? Or am I Freeman? Do I look for solutions in those dangerous places that, if successful, I would have had the tools to provide my people with the knowledge to be at the top and remain there? The film, I feel, makes viewers ask, why aren't we doing this? There are very real Black men and women and people who work for the CIA, FBI, and other government agencies, the military, for example, and we have yet to use the colonizers' tools to break down their home and rebuild greater. I wanted to try and answer this question for myself, and the only reasonable reply I had was because there is a crippling fear of retaliation. There's a reason that Americans don't overthrow their government like places such as Ethiopia, Liberia, and Haiti, and others. We are lacking that collective thought and spirit of willingness to die, destroy our comfortable little lives for the betterment of our entire nation and people. As a collective, Black Americans, we have surely adopted the individualism of the men who stole us from our original lands, the men and women of the Black Panther Party. What the young men are mirroring in this film all had agreed to and were well aware was that their lives were constant targets and very real threat of death was always there, yet they still did the necessary work to advance Black people in the ways they felt important. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend as if the Black Panther Party was a perfect revolutionary political group. It was not. And I couldn't sit here and say that, especially after having the privilege to speak to founding members. I know the Black Panther Party was not a perfect thing. In the film, Freeman, after having killed his own best friend, Dawson, who tried to stop him from continuing his guerrilla warfare efforts, tells his proteges as they remove the body from his apartment, "You think we playing games, killing white strangers? There are a lot of Dawsons out here, and some of them will try to stop us, but anybody that gets between us and freedom has got to go." Now that's anybody. This line reminds me of when Malcolm X proclaimed that Black people would get their freedom by any means necessary. And the very hard truth is that sometimes those means involve the death of other Black people, even our best friends, our family, our partners, perhaps our children. It involves the reality that not every Black person will want to be for and with the revolution. Very much like the love interest of Freeman. She was not interested in the militant movement that Freeman, unbeknownst to her, was spearheading. Where Freeman saw the young men he was training as change agents, she saw them as a nuisance to respectable Black progress in a white world. Even in the age of Marvel's Black Panther, there are still plenty of Dawsons who will take issue with Black liberation if it does not include white appeasement. So I wrote this short essay in response to the Spook Who Sat by the Door in 2018. So 19, 20, 21. So I wrote this essay 4 years ago, closer to 5 years ago, given the date that I wrote it. I've since have rewatched The Spook Who Sat by the Door, and I highly, 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 highly recommend, one, reading the 1969 novel, and then 2, watching the 1973 film. You can actually find The Spook Who Sat by the Door, the film, on YouTube, I believe, and it's also on streaming platforms as well. Like, you can watch it on Amazon and everything like that. And to bring it forward into more contemporary times, it seems that The Spook Who Sat by the Door is now being reworked into a series for FX, which I'm excited about. You know, I'm interested in seeing how they use this text and make it a series, because I think the film was quite wonderful, and I don't think I've seen such a beautiful adaptation of a novel. You know, it was handled with such respect. The Spook Who Sat by the Door, in my opinion, is a film that deserves much more attention. The original deserves much more attention, and I do believe that this FX show will absolutely introduce many a generation to the novel itself and to the film. You know, when we think about Black liberation movements, it is super unfortunate to realize that many of them were infiltrated and torn down. But like I wrote in this little short essay 4 years ago, I really do still continue to think about why we aren't doing this more. Like, damn, there are a lot of Black folks who do work for the CIA and the FBI and the military and other groups who do have the knowledge, and do know more intimate details. And I'm not saying we have to do nothing drastic. Maybe I am, but I'm not, but maybe I am. But it's just like, yeah, why are we not mobilizing in that way? I'm not saying we have to be carbon copies of the Black Panthers again, but also, there was a reason why that worked for as long as it did. One of the very dark truths I fear about America is that violence answers to violence, or violence bows to violence. You think about why Malcolm and Martin had such a disagreement, and a lot of it had to do with the violent versus nonviolent. But even as Martin progressed in his own political thought and theory, he himself was pulling back from let's kumbaya, my lord, and lock arms and march, because you know what? That's not cutting it. They don't respond to that. They respond to direct action. It's why I think financial protest is some of the most powerful protests we could do. I mean, think about the bus, the Montgomery bus. I mean, come on, we're not getting on your buses and see how much money y'all lose when we stop riding your buses because you said we could only sit in the back of the bus. Oh, now you're losing thousands, tens of thousands. Now you're almost losing $1 million. Now you will change the law, won't you? Now I bet I can sit my black behind anywhere on the bus. We need to start getting back to that. We really do need to get back to that. And I really do hope that more people will watch The Spook Who Sat by the Door. Now, Abraham W. Bolden is actually the first African-American Secret Service agent assigned to the Presidential Protective Division, appointed by John F. So the first black CIA agent was born in 1935. We can't say that The Spook Who Sat by the Door was inspired by this man. But, loose, inspiration, loose, very loosely. But The Spook Who Sat by the Door is not a very long film. It's 1 hour and 42 minutes. So if you can find 1 hour and 42 minutes out of your day to watch something extremely powerful and beautiful directed by Ivan Dixon, I would highly suggest you take some time and sit down and watch The Spook Who Sat by the Door. It's going to have you thinking. It's going to have you thinking. It's going to have you reviewing yourself and your own politics. It's going to have you asking yourself, how do I define revolution, and do I want to take place in a revolution? The blaxploitation era is the blaxploitation era saved Hollywood. Let's get into it. I'm already here. I've already arrived here. The blaxploitation era of film saved Hollywood. If it weren't for blaxploitation films, Hollywood wouldn't be Hollywood today. And that's what's so messed up. All these black actors are not getting their just due, not winning awards, being nominated and being laughed at, still not winning. Right? But if it weren't for our black behinds producing films, Hollywood would have been tanked. People were no longer interested in the skippity-doo-dah, hoo-ha-day films. People wanted better stories. People wanted better writing. People wanted more to look at. People wanted excitement. People wanted fun. People wanted drama. People wanted action. And the blaxploitation era of film gave them that. Now, yes, unfortunately, the blaxploitation era of film is also where a lot of these tropes and stereotypes do come from that have continued now into popular media. But, all right, you give and you take. You give and you take. But, matter of fact, I'm going to end it here, and I'm going to actually make a video about the blaxploitation era of film and why we need to give it more praise. I know a lot of black folks like, I hate the blaxploitation era because every black woman was just a sassy black woman, and it was boobs and butts, and it was all super fly, a bad mother, shut your mouth, and a who-do-do and shaft, and I didn't like that. Okay. All right, I get it. It wasn't perfect, but it gave people jobs. People made money. It made stars out of so many. It fed entire generations. It continues to feed entire generations. And it saved Hollywood. So shut up. We wouldn't even have Black Panther if it wasn't for the blaxploitation area and coffee. So bye. This is the end of this video, but I already got there. So I had to say it because I had already gotten there, because y'all done lost your gish darn minds sitting here critiquing the blaxploitation era like y'all do. Y'all don't be having no respect sometimes for where we come from. I understand that it's not perfect and it's not what we had wanted. People did what they had to do with what they had. And the blaxploitation era is what we had. Okay? The blaxploitation era actually allowed for us to be able to say, I'm going to say no to a role like this. I'm going to take a role like that. And also, it wasn't like that's all that was being produced. Within the same time of the blaxploitation era, we still got other black films. But I'm just saying, like, what works and made money, and that money was able to produce other things. Like Sonder. Have y'all ever seen Sonder? Have y'all ever watched Sonder? That's a beautiful film. That's a beautiful film. Y'all should watch that. But, you know, sometimes it just really hurts my heart. Really hurts my heart that y'all are so, you know, like anti some stuff. You know, when it's like, maybe we could, but y'all just put it out there again. Sonder, Sounder, Cecily Tyson, beautiful film. Really, if you want to talk about black love, if you want to talk about like a healthy film about black love and family and things like that, we should be watching Sonder. Because that is really one of the first times we get to see black people in love. We get to see a black family, although they're not the richest or the wealthiest because they're sharecroppers. We get to see black people have emotions. We get to see black people be multi-layered. We get to see black people actually be human beings on the screen and not caricatures of ourselves. And this film does come out during the blaxploitation era in the late 60s and the 70s. Sonder comes out in 1972. That's what I'm saying. Like, I understand that y'all don't like the blaxploitation era, but like, are y'all studying film? Are y'all watching film? Because within that same era, these other films came out and they did extremely well, because at that time, black film was just doing well in general, but also it mostly was black film being produced because all the money was coming from us because we saved a failing Hollywood and a failing film industry. Okay, I'm getting worked up, so I'm done. I'm gonna be back. But I also had to say my piece. Had to say my piece, because y'all don't be... Whew. I love y'all. I'll be back with another video. Thank you for listening. Go watch the Spook Who Sat by the Door. Go get your mind massaged and have a lot of thoughts.